Hello everyone, welcome to our discussion of Chapter 4. Using our PowerPoint slides, we're going to go through some new types of decisions or ones that we haven't dealt with before. In Chapter 3, we were looking at break even. We were looking at whether or not, how much profit, how much contribution margin is in our normal course of production and selling stuff. And we look at it in terms of fixed costs, variable costs, how much contribution margin is needed, and where we have reached that break-even point. So building on that idea and the idea of cost behavior, we're going to take that and start looking at decisions that are more immediate, meaning opportunities, challenges that come up in an order course that we're going to make decisions based on a short-term framework, meaning these are things that are going to impact us substantially over the next, say, 6 months to a year, maybe even sometimes shorter periods of time than that. So we're going in the construct of, we know that we have fixed costs, we know we have some variable costs, we know we have different types of those costs, and then how would that apply to day-to-day decisions with regard to products, regard to customers, that sort of thing, more breakdown of detail than we dealt with in Chapter 3. So let's dive in and look at some of the principles that will help us make these decisions. So what we're going to do is what's called differential analysis. Look at two scenarios: make the choice or stay the same as we are now is typically what we're going to look and compare. And when we put those side by side, that's called differential analysis. Now, when we are actually deciding making these kinds of decisions, and remember, we're short-term decisions, we need some guidelines as to what is relevant. A cost or revenue must be different between the alternatives to truly be relevant to the decision. Now, we may list all of the costs, all right, even if they're not relevant, and then look at the ones that are different. Or we may only look at the ones that are different. When we only look at the ones that are different, that's kind of referred to as differential analysis. So if you just make choice A and it has a cost, but if you make choice B and it doesn't, that's a relevant cost. Meaning we wouldn't have it if we made one choice, we would have it if we made the other choice. A cost is not relevant if it's sunk. Already has happened, already paid it, already behind us, or has been committed to regardless of our choices A or B. So costs we spent to repair our equipment last month are not relevant to what we do with that equipment this month. That's a sunk cost. It's already done. Nothing we do will bring that cost back. Will save us money on that, any of that those issues. Okay? So we can put two alternatives side by side, compare revenues and expenses. To see the differences, we're looking for the one that creates the highest profit. However, we always put a caveat on that. It may look profitable, but if there are qualitative factors involved, like damage to our reputation if we go forward, or some other issue that may impact our standing in the eyes of our customers or our employees, that sort of thing. It might hurt employees, even though it may look like makes it more profitable. We may choose not to do it based on those types of qualitative factors. So we're going to look at several examples and kind of outline what is involved in these decisions. So first one, and probably the most common of the ones that we will list and talk about, is called make versus buy. You usually read about it in the newspaper as outsourcing. Should you buy your pants already made in China, or should you produce them locally in your factory? That's a make versus buy. Either buy them already made or make them. That's a make versus buy decision. So how would you decide that? From a purely financial standpoint, you're going to look at the variable costs, the direct materials, the direct labor, the variable overhead. That's what's going to go up because you make the pants. Those are the costs that are going to go up. You can look at it on a per unit basis. You can look at it in total. You should come to the same conclusion regardless, but depending on which one you prefer to use. And you're going to compare adding those up, the direct materials, direct labor that would go into making those pants, variable overhead, the additional electricity and additional supplies that you need to make the pants. That is going to be added up and compared to the cost of buying it from the outside supplier. Now make sure when you consider buying it that you include shipping and other things, especially if it's coming from overseas. That's a big chunk of the cost. So it's not just buying it, it's buying it and getting to where it needs to be so that you can sell it. So that's the straightforward way, way to think about it. But you also need to be careful with fixed costs. There may be fixed costs that will stay regardless of whether you make or buy the pants. Those fixed costs are irrelevant. So you can list them and they would be the same for choice A or choice B, or you could just leave them off and just look at the costs that are different. All right. Other fixed costs may actually be relevant because they may be different. There may be certain fixed costs like a machinery that you need, and the fixed costs for depreciation, as an example, of that machinery, because you make the pants rather than buy them. Machinery you would not have to buy. Okay, there may be space you do not need, okay, because you buy it instead of make it. So those are examples of what we would refer to as differential fixed costs. So they're fixed. They wouldn't necessarily fluctuate with how many pants we made, but the fact that we make them versus buy them would influence whether or not we have those fixed costs, or how much those fixed costs may be. Maybe the machine, we need one machine if we buy it and two if we make it, or something like that, where there would still be the cost, but it would be a different amount. So we could build a side-by-side comparison, all the costs, even though they're the same, but sometimes that's easy to see, but it's a little extra work because you're listing things that aren't relevant, making sure that they're on the same on both sides. A comparison of adjusted costs that are different is referred to in your textbook as a shortcut or summary way of doing it. You should come to the same decision. It's a little less work, maybe a little harder to see and explain to others, though. It makes sense to us because we understand all of this about differential costs and sunk costs, but if you were having to explain it to the boss or to outsiders or someone who wasn't privy to all the information, then you might want to do the first way, the side-by-side comparison, because it's maybe a little easier to see for non-accountants. Okay, so that's the end of that decision. If your cost to buy it is and the fixed costs that go along with buying it is less than those three costs: direct materials, direct labor, and variable overhead, plus any fixed costs that would actually be there because you have to make it. You compare those two, and whatever is the lowest cost or the most profit will be your decision, absent qualitative factors like maybe we can't get the quality we need by bringing it in from out overseas. Maybe we need to supervise it more close to home to make sure that our quality is kept up. That might be a factor that goes beyond how many dollars and cents it makes or loses for us. All right. Another short-term decision. Product lines. We make 4 or 5 different products. We're looking at each of them. We're trying to decide whether or not any of them could be eliminated. Maybe we want to focus on particular ones, and we're trying to identify what we should focus on. Maybe we feel like we're too scattered. We're trying to do too many things for too many folks. The idea is to eliminate an unprofitable product line, one that is actually losing us money if that is happening. So we're looking at the direct fixed costs along with the variable costs like direct labor and direct materials. You're starting to see a pattern here. We are going to pay a lot more attention in these short-term decisions to our variable costs than our fixed costs. So we've got our variable costs, but we're also looking at direct fixed costs, the fixed costs that exist only because we have that particular product, that we could actually eliminate if we eliminated that product. If we stopped, say if we made sporting goods, we have bats and balls and gloves and stuff from a baseball standpoint, there may be fixed costs that exist only because we make balls and we decide that we are not going to make balls. Those costs, we could get rid of that fixed cost, the space, the machinery, the supervisor, whatever, that's a fixed cost. We obviously can tell that we would not have to buy the materials to make the balls or buy the balls or whatever, but there's also maybe some fixed costs we can eliminate. But don't get carried away. There's some fixed costs that would not be eliminated, that are shared by all the products, and therefore if you stop selling balls, you'll still have that fixed cost, the same amount, except now you'll only be sharing it between bats and gloves. And you won't have the balls to contribute to covering those fixed costs. So that's why we allocated fixed costs. Those that are not directly associated with our product should be not considered, should be left off. Now, in your textbook, they show you examples of allocating the fixed costs and then have you think through, what the decision should be. And the decision is almost always obvious if you just drop out the allocated fixed costs. If it is the product line is profitable without the allocated fixed costs, you should keep it. If it is not profitable once you've taken out the allocated fixed costs, then you should get rid of it, because every month that you're still operating, you're losing money. You're not making enough to cover the direct fixed costs. You would be better off eliminating that product. Okay? And again, you can do this side by side with all the revenue and costs. Do one scenario with all 3 of your products, and then do another scenario with just the 2 that you want to keep and the one that you're eliminating off, and then compare the profit. Or you can just look at the easier shortcut way is to just look at the things that are different, which is look at the particular product that you're thinking about getting rid of and seeing if it is profitable before allocating any fixed costs. All right? So, not that we stop thinking about fixed costs in general. They have to be covered on the long run, but for a short term and looking at our product lines, we need to decide independent of those allocated fixed costs. All right. Otherwise, we're going to make bad decisions. All right, and then we're going to eliminate a product, still have the fixed costs, and then wonder why we just dug ourselves a hole, even bigger hole, because now we have the fixed costs are still the same, and we have fewer products to cover them. So, especially when you're talking about a product, a new product, eliminating a product we think is unprofitable, the underlying idea is that there's an opportunity cost. If we're making balls, we cannot make something else. Frisbees, let's say. So in theory, we can't do both. Now, maybe in practice you can, and then this wouldn't be the decision you'd make. But if you can't, if there's you only have people or the resources to make one or the other, then making one necessarily stops you from making the other. And so making the other that you have to stop to make the first product is an opportunity cost. So if you choose to make balls, the cost of making those balls is the profit you could have made making Frisbees. Okay? So, example on the slides, opportunity cost for attending class, watching this video, whatever, is the money you could have made if you were working instead. Assumes that you have a place that would pay you for that work, meaning that you could have done that, no job, there's not an opportunity cost. Sometimes those have a hard to put a price on. Time your family. But we always, in accounting, we kind of have to reduce everything to dollars and cents in order to make the decisions and be able to do the analysis. So if we can eliminate a product, it may allow us to do something else with that space, with that machinery, make another product, rent it out to someone else, sell it, whatever. So we compare the current profit with the profit with the new alternative. So if you're just eliminating the product, that keeps it relatively simple. But what if you eliminate that product and add a different product? Then that adds a layer of complexity where you're going to have to look at, okay, here's the three products as they currently are. This is what our profit is. All right. Then this was what it would be if we eliminated product B and replaced it with product D. And again, we would not know exactly. A lot of estimating being done. You see how important it is to know what your fixed and variable costs are, to know what's going to change if you have more volume, what is going to come in, because these decisions are all based on our definitions of costs, what the cost behavior is, how much control we have over it. So if we don't have good information about those things, if we haven't done our job in figuring out which are fixed and variable costs, then these decisions get made incorrectly. So, leave off right there. We'll come back for our second half of this presentation and discussion with some more information about sunk costs and how we identify those.